Welcome back to the deep dive. Usually when we sit down and talk about sports, we're talking about, the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat.
The stats, the highlights, all of that. You know the drill.
Exactly. But today we're talking about something much stranger. We are talking about the utility of defeat.
It's a concept that feels completely backwards, doesn't it? We have a source today who argues that a crushing loss...
On home soil, in a championship final.
Right. He thinks that's not a tragedy. He thinks it's actually the only thing that can save their future.
It's wild. We're looking at a very specific, very raw piece of source material. It's a transcript from a YouTube video by a creator named Jalal El-Bahraoui.
And you really have to picture this. This isn't some polished pundit in a TV studio.
Not at all. It's a monologue. It's a fan speaking directly to his camera in English, which he points out isn't his first language.
And he does that specifically because he wants the international community to understand the stakes. He wants the world to know why he is, well, basically asking for a revolution in Moroccan football.
And the context here is it's absolutely critical to understanding his mindset.
It is. Morocco has just hosted a African Cup of Nations, the AFCON. The expectation was massive. And they reached the final against Senegal.
A dream scenario, really.
A lever? Yeah. Well, they lost.
Yeah.
And, normally you'd expect a video like this to be a morning session.
Oh, for sure. Tears, anger at the ref, the whole "we were robbed" narrative.
But this source takes a turn that I did not see coming. The core tension is incredible. He is arguing that this devastating loss is a blessing in disguise.
Because it forces a choice, a really hard choice.
Exactly. It forces a confrontation with reality that a win would have just papered over.
So our mission today is to unpack this paradox. We're going to look at this weird final match he describes, the complicated legacy of a national hero coach.
And some of the intense geopolitical feelings that, are always simmering just under the surface of international football.
It's really a case study in leadership and loyalty, and it asks a question that applies to business just as much as it does to soccer.
Which is?
When does your gratitude for past success become a liability for your future growth?
That is the question that just haunts this entire transcript.
So let's jump right into the event that triggered all this. The AFCON final. Morocco versus Senegal at home.
And the source, Jalal, describes the atmosphere of this game as simply weird.
That's the word he keeps coming back to. Weird. It wasn't just that they lost, it was how the game felt.
And he paints a picture of the opponent, Senegal, that is. Well, let's just say it's less than flattering.
Oh, he does not hold back. He calls the Senegalese team's behavior childish. He says they reacted like children.
And he has this really specific visual that I found fascinating. He compares their whole attitude to street football.
Now, hold on. In football culture, street football can be a huge compliment.
Oh, absolutely. It implies grit, creativity, flair.
Right. But here, he does not mean it as a compliment. He talks about, when he was a kid playing in the street, you'd do anything to win. You'd scream, you'd cry.
And he says that's what Senegal was doing, crying on the field to take the cup. He calls it a lack of fair play.
So for him, it's the difference between professionalism and just desperation. He's accusing them of wanting to win with any kind of way.
It's a harsh critique, but it sets up his whole emotional state. He feels the game wasn't won on merit, but on theatrics.
Exactly. He even says, I don't care if they beat Morocco 3-0 or 4-0, I would applaud them if they played football. But in his view, they didn't.
And yet, and here's the twist, despite feeling the game was ugly and the opponent was unprofessional, he immediately pivots to the silver lining.
This is that paradox of defeat we talked about.
He says explicitly, there is a good on it.
And the good is entirely political. He believes that if Morocco had won that final, if they lifted the trophy on home soil,
the Football Federation would have been handcuffed. They would have been absolutely forced to keep the current coach, Walid Regragui.
Who he calls Weedy.
Right, Weedy. They'd have to keep him for the 2026 World Cup.
Of course. How do you fire a guy who just won the African Cup? Success buys you time.
Success breeds job security. It makes you untouchable. But the source is arguing that right now, job security is the enemy.
He believes keeping Weedy would be a big mistake for the World Cup.
So in his eyes, losing the AFCON final provides the necessary political capital, the excuse, really, to fire him.
It's just ruthless pragmatism. He's saying, I'm glad we lost the battle so we can win the war.
That's it. He's sacrificing a continental trophy for a shot at the global one. And to understand why he's so desperate, we have to look at how he views the coach.
Yeah.
Because it's not like he hates the guy.
No, not at all. And that's what makes this so complex. This is not a hate video.
He spends a good chunk of time actually praising the coach.
He does. He acknowledges the history. He credits Walid Regragui with this massive psychological shift in Moroccan football.
He talks about the World Cup in Qatar, 2022. He says before that, the Moroccan mentality was basically just happy to participate.
Right. Qualify for the World Cup, wave the flag, maybe you score a goal, you go home happy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he credits the coach with changing that mindset from participating to dreaming to win. He mentions the joy, the car horns, the national pride.
He really acknowledges that the coach closed the gap between Morocco and the world's elite. He says, imagine how much work he did for mental Moroccan mentality.
So he respects the man. He respects the achievement. But, and it's a very big but, he argues the coach is now stuck.
The verdict is just blunt. Time to go.
It's the classic, what got you here won't get you there. He says the coach is now making mistakes even a child can realize.
I mean, that is a stinging indictment. What are these mistakes he's so focused on?
It mostly boils down to player selection and tactical stagnation. The source argues that the coach is loyal to players who, shouldn't be there, and he's ignoring new talent.
And he names names, too. He specifically mentions a player named Yamek, saying he was doing no positive things.
Which is tough to hear if you're Yamek, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And then he contrasts that with a player he calls Zabiri, which we think is a younger talent like Ziri Lang, who he says is a top guy for that post, but was ignored.
It's the classic fan frustration, isn't it? You're watching a coach rely on veterans who might be past their prime, while this exciting young talent is just sitting on the bench.
He calls it a joke that some of them are even called up. He thinks the coach is playing favorites, sticking with the family that won in Qatar instead of building the team for 2026.
And this is where he brings in a really fascinating historical comparison to prove his point.
The previous coach, Vahid Halilhodžić.
Exactly. This is the core of his logical argument. He says, look what happened before Qatar. Morocco made a really bold move. They changed the coach right before the tournament.
And people thought it was crazy at the time.
They did. But the source claims that if they had kept Halilhodžić, they wouldn't have won a single game. Not against Croatia, not against Belgium, not against Canada.
He says they would have been out immediately.
Right. But because they made that ruthless change, they made history.
Yeah.
And now he sees the same pattern repeating.
But in the worst way. He predicts that if they keep the current coach for 2026,
they won't pass the first round. He even has a specific prediction.
Yeah, Brazil and Scotland will send them packing.
It's a very specific fear. He believes the current coach has just hit his ceiling. The family mentality, the Nia he mentions, which is like this shared faith or intent, it worked in Qatar.
But now the magic is gone.
And what's left is just tactical rigidity.
Yeah.
So his argument is, we thanked Halilhodžić and moved on, and it worked. Now we need to thank Weedy.
Acknowledge he did a great job, but move on before he crashes the car in 2026.
Precisely. He says we will thank him and then go with honor. It's not personal. It's just business.
Now, speaking of personnel, we have to talk about the players. Because the coach isn't the only one under the microscope.
The source has a very complicated relationship with the star player he calls Z.
Hakim Ziyech.
Right. Z. Now, Ziyech is a legend. But the source argues his character isn't helping on the field anymore.
This is such a nuanced take on team dynamics. He admits Ziyech is a nice guy. He says he has great relationships with other key players like Bono and Brahim Diaz.
He even says he's way better than anyone because of his character.
But then he drops the hammer. He says, what are you going to do with his character if he's not helping on the field?
It's the nice guy paradox. In a high-performance world, being the locker room leader isn't enough if you aren't delivering.
It's that same theme again, isn't it? Loyalty to the past versus the needs of the present. But then look at how he treats Brahim Diaz.
The penalty incident.
Yeah, Diaz missed a penalty in the final. And it sounds like he tried a Panenka, that little chip shot.
Which, when it works, you look like a genius. When it fails,
you look arrogant, like you're showing off. Fans usually crucify players for that, but the source defends him.
He does. He argues really passionately that Diaz was not showing off.
He says, no one will do showing off in that kind of situation.
And he links this pressure to something else. He pivots from the penalty miss to what he calls the envy and jealousy from the opposing side.
And this is where the deep dive gets into some pretty heavy and honestly volatile territory.
He has a very strong theory about why the atmosphere in that final was so hostile. He believes Morocco's organizational success.
The good hotels, the transport, all the infrastructure.
Yes, it actually breeds resentment.
Yeah.
He thinks other countries don't like that. He says they prefer chaos.
He calls it child compartment, childish behavior, but born out of this deep-seated envy.
It's a narrative of exceptionalism, really. He sees Morocco as trying to raise the standard for African football, and he feels like other nations are dragging them down for it.
And to illustrate this reality as he sees it, he reaches for a very intense political analogy. He brings up Donald Trump.
He does. And just to be very clear for everyone listening, we are reporting on the source's analogy here. This is his worldview.
Right. He references Trump's infamous comments where he used that very derogatory term to describe certain countries.
The shithole countries comment. And the source says Trump insulted them straight in your face.
But he uses this not to agree with the politics, but to say, look, this is the reality. He uses that extreme rhetoric to validate his feeling that there's this deep dysfunction that Morocco is trying to overcome.
And that they are being hated for it. It's a startling moment in the transcript. He's basically saying the world is harsh, people envy us, and that's why this match felt so dirty.
It shows just how high the emotions are running. For him, this wasn't just a soccer match.
No, it was a clash of standards, a clash of civilizations almost.
Yeah.
And losing to what he sees as unprofessionalism it hurts that much more.
Which brings us all the way back to the decision makers. If the stakes are this high, then the leadership has to be flawless. And the source has a direct message for Fila.
Fouzi Likja, the head of the Moroccan Football Federation.
He appeals to him directly. He says Fila is more patient, but definitely he should step this step.
He's begging the federation not to be paralyzed. Not by the recent success, not by the coach's popularity.
He acknowledges it might be a risk. He says if he wants to take a risk because of the money, that's another thing. But then he frames the counter-argument.
That it's not about money, it's about bringing joy for the people in Morocco.
That's the ultimate currency here, joy. The source believes the current path only leads to anxiety. He has this image of fans watching the 2026 World Cup.
With their hand on their heart.
Meaning in fear, in terror that they're going to crash out.
Exactly. And he wants to replace that fear with hope. He says if they change the coach, they can legitimately try to win the World Cup.
Not just participate, win.
That's the standard now. And that is the absolute crux of his plea. He believes the Federation has choices. They aren't in a bad situation, but doing nothing.
Sticking with the status quo.
That's the worst choice of all.
It's amazing, isn't it? You have a team that reached the semifinals of the World Cup, reached the final of their continental tournament. By most metrics, that is a golden era.
Absolutely. Most nations would kill for that record.
But this fan, he's looking at the trajectory, not the trophy cabinet. He sees the curve flattening. He sees stagnation.
And he's willing to blow up all that stability to chase the next level of greatness. It reminds us that in high-performance sports, the past is irrelevant the second the next game starts.
Gratitude is for the fans in the stands.
It can't be the operating principle for the people in the boardroom. Think about it. If they keep the coach out of loyalty and they crash out of the World Cup, that loyalty will look like incompetence.
And the source is trying to give them permission to be ruthless. He's saying, we, the fans, understand. We will thank him, but please let him go.
It's a preemptive breakup. He wants to end it while they can still be friends, rather than waiting for the ugly divorce after a World Cup failure.
So as we wrap this up, what's the big takeaway? We've got a grieving fan, a weird final, and a plea to fire a national hero.
For me, it's about the burden of ambition. Once you've tasted the World Cup semifinals, good enough is no longer good enough. Morocco has graduated to a level where second place in Africa is a crisis.
That's a great point. You don't panic about the coach if you expect to lose. You only panic if you believe you should win.
Exactly. The panic in this source's voice. That's the panic of a top-tier footballing nation.
This source, Jalal, he's basically saying, we have the car to win the race. We just need a new driver. And even though we love the old driver, he's tired. He's taking the wrong turns.
And he's willing to accept the pain of that AFCON loss if it forces a driver change. It's a fascinating choice.
It really is. And it forces us to ask a tough question, not just in football, but in anything.
Right.
And that's what I want to leave you, the listener, with today. Think about your own life, your business, your team. We all have people or strategies that got us to where we are. But here's the question. How do you know when loyalty to that past success has become the single biggest obstacle to your future growth?
And do you have the courage to make that change before you start losing?
That's the deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.